Okay guys, in this lesson 1.1 variables and expressions, we're going to discuss what an algebraic expression is, what it looks like, and different words we could use to describe algebraic expressions. So an algebraic expression has different combinations of constants, which are just numbers, variables, and operations. So it's basically any combination of a math expression that uses adding, subtracting, multiplying, and division most often, variables, and numbers. So for example, a constant could be 5x. The number 5 would be the constant here. Some of you might be familiar with the word coefficient, in which we will use later on in the year. All right. A variable, for example, I just wrote 5x. A variable would be the x, or a letter used to represent a value. You could use any letter in the alphabet. The most common ones that we use in algebra are x, y, and z. Terms, and this is an important word that we're going to be using a lot later on in a different chapter. Terms are separated by addition or subtraction signs. So for example, if I were to write this algebraic expression, 3x plus 1, there are two terms here, the 3x and the positive 1. If I were to write the expression 2x squared plus x minus 4, this would have three terms. Again, terms are separated by addition or subtraction signs. The next thing we're going to talk about are just the words or phrases that we could use that suggest each of the following operations. We have this first sign here, which I think is the most common operation probably we have in math, and that is going to be our addition sign. So we have the following words here that describe that operation. We have the word addition, plus, added to, sum, together, combine, more than, and increase. A lot of these words are used very often. The usual words, addition, plus, added to. Sum is very popular, and more than, I would say those are the first couple of most popular words for that operation. Our second one here is our subtraction sign, and here are the words that we would use for subtraction. You're very often going to see take away and less than. These are all words that mean minus or subtract. The next operation here is just a little dot. This is going to represent multiplication. We could also use multiplication as an x. However, the one thing that wouldn't be a good idea for is that if I wanted to say x times 5, the multiplication using it as an x looks like the variable x. So we don't usually write multiplication with an x, we use it with the dot there. And here are the couple of words. You might find a couple more, but these are the most popular ones, or may think of a couple more. We have multiply, times, product is a really good word. Of, when we get into percents, we'll be using the word of, 20% of a price, and that refers to multiplying. And twice specifically refers to multiplying by 2. We could say triple as well, which would be multiplying by 3. And our last operation here is our little division sign. And here are the words that would mean divide. We have divided by, quotient, part, half means divide by 2. Ratio is a fraction, also refers to division. And the word per, the most common word here that you gotta look out for is quotient. Now there are other words that tell us other operations and part of expressions, and they have to do with exponents. So I have a little list at the bottom. We have squared is an exponent of 2, cubed is an exponent of 3, to the 4th is an exponent of 4, and so on. And then we could also use the word power, to the power of whatever exponent that you want. A lot of students often, this is just a fun fact, confuse squared and twice or double. Twice and double mean multiply by 2, but squared is an exponent. So if I wanted to say twice x, that would be 2 times x. But if I say x squared, that's x to the 2nd power. So that's the difference between those two. This is multiplying by 2, and this is multiplying x times itself. So if we were to substitute numbers in for those variables, we would get 2 different values. One thing they're going to ask us to do is write a verbal expression for each of these algebraic expressions. You could get very, very fancy with these, or you could keep it very, very simple, because as you can see at the top, we do have quite a bit of different words for each operation. You don't have to pick the fanciest one if you don't want. You could keep it very simple. For example, number 1, you could just say 3 times x to the 4th power, or you could write the product of 3 and x to the 4th power. You could use 3 multiplied times x to the 4th power. You don't always have to use the fancy one, and there's a lot of different options for these. So the one that they give us here is the product of 3 and a number x to the 4th power. That's fine. You could also use times. In number 2, there are the operations of multiplying, because it's 5 times. There's an exponent, z squared, and there's also addition. Just like reading a sentence, you could read this from left to right, and again, you don't have to use the fanciest words. There are many different options that you could give for these type of problems or these type of questions. The one they give us here is the sum of 5 times z squared and 16. Remember, the word sum is on our addition list. That's going to be a very popular one that you're going to see. You could have also read it from left to right, 5 times z squared plus 16. That would also be correct. Number 3, again, we have similar operations from number 2. We have multiplication and an exponent, but we have to the 3rd power, and we have subtraction. The example they give us here is 4 less than 2 times a number cubed. This phrase less than, also on the list of subtraction that I highlighted, we got to look out for that, because that means when an expression when that item comes second. So 4 less than 2 times a number cubed. Again, this is a little bit fancier. You could go left to right and just say 2 times z cubed minus 4. That's completely fine. You gotta just be careful with how you say subtraction phrases, because sometimes it means the reverse, or the terms are in switched spots. And the last one, we have a fraction. We could use this as, we could say divided by 2, because 1/2 times something and divided by 2 is the same thing. We have division here, and we have a sum. The example they give us is half a number plus the quotient of the same number and 7. Very plainly, you could also say half of x plus x divided by 7. The word quotient is going to come up a lot. That is highlighted in the division column there. Lastly, we have the opposite. They could give us a sentence, and this is what we're going to see the most. They're going to give us a sentence, and we're going to write the expression. So a number t more than 6, more than, you could always just check out the top in our chart, refers to addition. And whenever they say a number with a letter, that's the variable they're using, okay? So a number t more than 6 is going to be 6 plus t. If you wrote t plus 6, that's not necessarily incorrect, but more than, just like take away from or less than, means that it comes second. Number 2, 10 less than This is a phrase that means subtraction. The product of, that's a word that means multiplication, 7 and F. Sometimes I suggest to students to break it down and say less than is subtraction and write the operation above. Product means multiplication, write it above. And then a lot of times it's easy to write. Less than is one of those phrases that means it comes last. 10 less than, the 10 is going to come last. The product of 7 and F. So again, we're not going to write 7 times F with this X because I mentioned before it's sometimes confusing with the variable X. What we're going to write it as is the following: 7F minus 10, less than. That's a very important phrase. We saw it up here in number 3 when they gave us the sentence. The part before that phrase goes last. It's important to remember. And lastly, their last example, 1/3, that is a fraction. The quotient, remember quotient is going to come up a lot, it means division, of the number x and 5. Remember, the number with a letter is just the variable you're going to use, okay? This expression would look like so: 1/3 x divided by 5. Let's not use the division symbol, although you can and it wouldn't necessarily be incorrect. Sometimes you need to put parentheses in certain instances, so it would just be safe to use fraction for quotient or anything related to division. That's it for this lesson. Let me know if you have any questions and have